Shalom and welcome to the Rabbi Avi Show. Thank you for listening to our podcast. Please like, recommend, rate us well, and subscribe to the Rabbi Avi Show. If you appreciate our efforts, feel free to support us financially through patreon.com/horizontal media. Hello and welcome back to the Rabbi Avi Show. I'm your host, Rabbi Avi, and today we bring you a conversation that dives into the deepest questions of the soul, purpose, and legacy. On the show today, we speak with author E.C. Stilson, Elisa Magagna, a friend of the show and a truly profound voice. We're here to discuss her powerful new novel, The Unfinished Business of Opal Bloom. This book and this conversation were born from a place of raw, immediate experience. In the interview, Elisa shares the harrowing details of a severe health crisis that brought her face to face with mortality, an experience that became the catalyst for the novel and inspired its intense focus on themes like regret, grief, and forgiveness. You'll hear her moving story about the unexpected sources of encouragement she received to finish this crucial work. The Unfinished Business of Opal Bloom represents a unique and captivating spiritual architecture. Tune in as Elisa breaks down her version of heaven as the eternal symphony, the Pleopits, a form of purgatory, envisioned not as a massive waiting room or a place of punishment, but as an active school of craft and learning led by a Master Luthier. We explore how this unique framework, using musical instruments and harmony, offers a path for a soul to repair itself. Elisa speaks openly about confronting her inner critic through the journey of her main character, Opal, and how her own life of struggles has taught her to quiet the harsh inner voice and find peace in the perfectly imperfect present. Join us for this honest, compelling, and ultimately hopeful discussion about faith, legacy, and what it truly means to complete one's unfinished business. Elisa, welcome back. Good to have you here. You have this beautiful, powerful new novel, The Unfinished Business of Opal Bloom. And I was so deeply and truly moved to see my name in the dedication. I want to start by just saying thank you. As you begin this project, what inspired this specific story and this dedication at this moment in your life?
So it was about in 2021, I got really sick. We were on a road trip, and the doctor actually told my husband if we would have gotten there about a half an hour later, they think that they couldn't have done anything and I probably would have passed away. And that really got me thinking just about mortality and how quickly things can change. I've been fighting stage 4 melanoma for, over 5 years now. And what's really hard about this is when you realize I might not pass away from the cancer. It could be from complications with treatments, and that's what it was that specific time. But how quickly life can change on a dime for any of us, not just somebody who's fighting cancer or a terminal illness or a chronic illness. Anyway, so I started having these really strange dreams. They sound bizarre, but I'd have these dreams that the spirit of death would come and visit me and stand by my bed. And I would wake up and they were so real. It would just seem like it had actually happened. And I also had dreams that God would come and visit me and teach me these lessons. And I really think it was just my subconscious trying to deal with everything. And that paired with going to the synagogue and learning from my rabbi, and then also, meeting you and learning from you as well. I just think maybe subconsciously I was trying to deal with these tough issues that we all go through, like regret and loneliness, grief, forgiveness, and just trying to say, I need to wrap up these things in my own life because if I am going to pass away, I need to be at peace with this. But I had told you a little bit about this book over the summer. I had another moment just this past summer. I had another moment where it got really close again. And, I've had several close calls where I could have died. And I spoke with you after that. Just, I don't know if you realized what a hard time I was having at that moment. I was trying to stay upbeat and just, anyway. And you really encouraged me to finish the book. And one of the biggest reasons that I finished was because you encouraged me to finish. And it was really ironic because a woman, she visits her sister who lives across the street. She came over to the house and she encouraged me to finish. And I hadn't said anything about this book to her. She just said, whatever book you're working on, you've got to finish this. And it was right when I had talked to you. And so I put both of you guys in the dedication. I just thought, that was amazing. But it really encouraged me that if there are things that I want to get done, that I need to be at peace with, on top of all these huge issues that we talked about, like forgiveness and things like that. But getting things done, writing a book or whatever it is you want to accomplish in life, having a podcast, right? Being an amazing rabbi, whatever it is, we need to go after those things because life is short and it will pass us by. And I've just seen that with my life. I never expected to get so sick in my 30s and now my 40s, and it's just changed everything.
You have a really unique perspective now. Your book builds this incredibly detailed spiritual landscape. Heaven is the eternal symphony. Hell is the shadow side. Why did you choose music and harmony as the central language for the afterlife and for God?
I think it's just what makes sense to me. I play several instruments. My main two instruments are the violin and the piano, but I got this idea of what would it be like if my violin that has been with me through so much throughout my life since I was 14, 15 years old, what if I could sense my violin's soul? And then thinking, what if I could play an instrument that was actually my soul or my husband's soul or somebody else's? What would that be like? And so that was kind of the basis for this story of, just this, there's this Master Luthier in this vast workshop with, just infinity worth of instruments where this woman can go and she can pick up any instrument she wants to and play it and see what somebody's soul is like. But I don't know. I just thought, to me, sometimes eternity and heaven, this sounds so finite and ridiculous, but it sounds so boring. But this made it not boring.
So you made heaven the eternal symphony, and you made hell the shadow side. Um, and at the center of this is, and I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this correct, the Pleopits or Pleopites.
Yeah, that's right. Pleopits. Yeah.
Pleopits or Purgatory. But it's not a massive waiting room. You've populated it with a guide, as you said, the Master Luthier. Why was it important for you to frame Purgatory not as a place of punishment, but as a place of active education and craft?
So I had heard from a rabbi. I love listening to these different podcasts that you and my rabbi here in Pocatello will send to me. But I had listened to this specific one about how heaven and hell are the same place. And it's this very strange dichotomy where you can have everything in one, but it's all perspective. And it really kind of reminds me of life here on earth in a lot of ways. But I wanted to show that purgatory or Gehenna or whatever you want to call it, that it is actually this place where it's what you get from it. And what's interesting is the whole story takes place in that realm, which I find far more fascinating than than heaven or hell themselves, because it's really this place of learning. And I just think that's such a beautiful concept, that we really get what we can from it ourselves. We get what we put in. We will find what we look for.
I want to go a little deeper into the musical aspect, and also just why a luthier specifically. What does a master craftsman who builds and repairs musical instruments teach us about the nature of a soul and the unfinished, as you call it, the unfinished business it needs to resolve?
So, if I could play the violin that looks like my soul, I really thought, boy, it's probably a mess up there. It's got to have all these dents, all these scratches. It is just a mess. And if there is a master luthier up there, maybe he could fix it. Maybe he or she, or God, this entity, could just make this beautiful. And so that's part of the story, is that I have actually known a master luthier, which is incredible. And she has been able to take these violins that they are horrendous, quite frankly, and then they make the most beautiful music. And you start thinking about all of us like that. There's that Jewish story that I heard that I just love, but it talks about how each one of us, you've heard this, I'm sure, 1,000 times, but how a string connects each one of us to God. And when we make a mistake or something that separates us from God, sin, that the angel comes and cuts the string. And when we repent, the angel ties the string. And when my rabbi told this story, I thought, boy, my string has more knots in it than anybody I know. But then she ended it by saying the strings with the more knots, they're actually shorter and they're closer to God because they've had to learn more. And so that was the concept behind these instruments that maybe don't sound the best at first or look the best. Sometimes it just takes some repairs and some tuning, and then they're just ready to sing this beautiful music for God.
I want to look at your previous book, which I'm also enthralled with. I'm actually still in the process of reading that one. But that one you call Ring the Bell. And based on those writings, you describe picturing your best friend Adam or your grandma waiting for you when you get petrified about death. And you even wondered, and I'll quote you, who showed Zeke around heaven, knowing the powerful personal significance of your son Zeke in your life and your vision of the afterlife. How did you balance the comfort of those familiar loving figures waiting for you with the grand abstract architecture of the eternal symphony?
Yeah, it really makes you wonder what our loved ones are doing in heaven. If they're looking down on us, if they can even see us. I honestly believe I've had some really strange things happen, and I know a lot of other people have too, where they feel like loved ones who have passed away are looking after us, out for us. And I've had somebody tell me, as far as Zeke, who passed away, that she feels like I have a cheerleader in heaven. She had a little girl who passed away, and she said the same thing for herself. I thought that was such a beautiful thing. But in my book, Ring the Bell, I talk about how I had this really strange dream about my grandma, that she said she didn't want me to be scared that I would die sooner than I had hoped, but she would be waiting to show me around. And I can't believe how much peace that has given me. What was really strange, I mean, I think this was another sign that our loved ones are looking out for us. But in that dream, she was wearing this apron, And it was about 2 months later, I got this package in the mail after I'd had that dream, and I hadn't really told a lot of people about it. And my aunt sent me a package in the mail, and she had made me this apron. And in one of the pockets, she had put this newspaper that my grandma had clipped this newspaper about the significance of aprons. And I just thought it was beautiful. Some people might think it's coincidence, but I think they're looking out for us. And maybe my grandma's even learned the violin in heaven. We don't know.
Was she
She had
musical?
no rhythm,
She didn't. She had no rhythm.
but now she does. I don't know. Maybe she still doesn't. That's okay.
I want to turn to Opal herself. One of the most arresting passages is her inner critic. This grating monologue telling her, "You were selfish. You could have been much better. You were a coward, a failure, a fraud." This feeling of always striving, always believing she wasn't quite good enough, is so painfully human. How much of writing Opal's story was a way for you to confront or perhaps to make peace with your own inner critic?
Yeah, those words are absolutely things that I've thought. And what's interesting is after writing this book, I feel like some of those fears and thoughts have quieted down a lot because somehow I've been able to come to peace. I think when we think about what our friends or loved ones are going through, if somebody came to you and asked you for advice, something that they're going through, you would be so kind and compassionate to them. But I think sometimes when we are dealing with those same issues, we can be so harsh and judgmental and think, oh, I could have done better. I should have done this. And so somehow writing about Opal Bloom, who I tried to write just this very selfish, egotistical, prideful character, but I thought if if I would even want her to find peace with this, which she does, then I need to try to find peace with it too. But yeah, it definitely helped me. It was amazing. I had no idea what this would do for me just writing this out. And I've even gone back to it a couple times, especially the one chapter where she plays for she plays her the song that she's written for her whole life. It's like the culmination of everything that she's done trying to gain entrance into heaven, and to realize that that wasn't good enough. That was a really hard chapter for me to write, but I felt like that one really changed my perspective on a lot of things, just kind of letting the perfectionism go, and just saying it's okay that nobody's perfect. I mean, that's the exact opposite of what I think God wants us to be. I think He wants us to be perfectly imperfect, just ourselves. And so just coming to peace with that I'm me, and that's good enough. And God made each of us. He loves us just the way we are.
It sounds like that process was cathartic for you.
It really was. Yeah.
You write that people want to define and quantify everything about suffering, pain, or guilt. It's easier to wrap our heads around something if there's a reason, especially if there's a solution. Opal's inner critic defines her life as a series of failures. Was the act of writing her story in the Pleo pits a place of education and solution? Was that your way of confronting that human need to quantify and resolve suffering?
I think so. It's interesting because when I first got really sick in 2020, I read, Why Do Bad Things Happen to Good People? When I first read that in 2020, I hated the book. I hated it so much. And I thought, this doesn't resonate with me. I don't like this. And I think it was because I was so desperately trying to understand why I was suffering. I really bought into that idea of a lot of people say, oh, well, God doesn't give us what we can't handle. God must think I'm a badass, right? and I still love that saying, but do I necessarily think that that's true now. No, I don't. I think that sometimes it's just a roll of the dice. We don't know. And maybe God's just watching too, just kind of seeing all of this unfold. It's really fascinating to think about all of that. But I reread that book just last year and had a totally different perspective. I think I've been given a really huge gift that I have lived this long, because I thought in my first year of being so sick that I had learned a tremendous amount. But things that I have learned now, I just feel like I've reached this different stage with it. And I know that we're constantly learning and changing and growing, but I have learned so much more. It was really neat to be able to read that book again and just have such a different lens and say, okay, I can definitely see where he was coming from with this, that there doesn't have to be a rhyme and a reason. And I think what makes that hard is that then we have to trust that somehow it will be okay even when it's not. And that is a very difficult thing. Just me thinking, is this going to get so bad again like it was this summer, where I could have died from complications again from the cancer treatments? I mean, things just are so uncertain sometimes. But what will happen to my husband? What will happen to my kids? And just that sort of thing, it's difficult. But then finding that trust in the uncertainty, I do think that there has been this peace that has come with it, that has been life changing for me. Instead of striving for this perfection and trying to somehow control the chaos and find a rhyme and a reason for everything, that I can just kind of sit back and just really live in the present.
Speaking of perfectionism, you write that Opal's perfectionism and ambition weren't from malice, but from the fear of abandonment and a deep, aching wound. As you've navigated your own health journey, and you're speaking about it specifically, which so often forces a kind of life review, how much of this book was a process of looking back and reinterpreting your own story with that same compassion?
Oh, I think so much of it was just talking about abandonment. When I first got sick, I really started studying the story of Abraham and Isaac. And that just, I mean, talk about seeing things through a different lens, because suddenly I was starting to put myself in the shoes of just being almost, I don't want to say this, but somehow the sacrificial lamb of why is God allowing this? Why is God doing this? And it's not even to me, because I feel like in a lot of ways I'm okay to handle this, because I don't know how to say it, but I feel like we are somehow given the tools to handle what we end up going through. I want to believe that. I desperately want to believe that. But I don't understand why my family is going through this. I talked to my dad not too long ago, and he was just having such a hard time with the fact that I've been sick. And just hearing the pain in his voice and knowing how hard this has been for him, it can be really hard not to get confused or even upset, because I mean, all of us, we don't want the people we love to be hurting. We don't even want strangers to be hurting, let alone the people we love. And so I think I have dealt with that abandonment, and you almost think at some point, in my shoes anyways, I have thought, well, if I do all these things, then maybe God will love me.
And you know that God really does love you, Elisa.
Hmm. Yeah, but I think it's hard. I'm sorry to cry, but it is hard when you're facing things and you do feel that abandonment. But yeah, it has been surreal though, writing this and seeing how different people treated Opal and how I would treat Opal. How I hope anybody would want to treat Opal and just say, wow, maybe she was this prideful, egotistical woman, but hey, there was a reason for it. And I do honestly believe that there are reasons for why everybody is the way that they are. And you never know what somebody's going through if you just take a deeper look to try to understand. I think that if we were to truly see what other people are going through at the grocery store or wherever we might be, I think we would be dumbfounded. You know, I've seen people around who I know from the cancer center, and people would never know that they're fighting cancer, you know, just things like that.
Later, the harsh inner critic is countered by a gentle whisper that tells her, "You were doing your best, Opal, just like everyone else." That's the most anyone can do. For you personally, what has it taken to be able to hear that voice of grace?
It's going to sound really ridiculous, but it's the smallest things. I had this day when I was so sick, I felt like I couldn't do hardly anything. And I rested that morning, and that afternoon I got up and I decided there were some pants that my son and my husband they needed fixed, and I just needed to hem them and just patch some little things, and I made dinner. And Javi, it was amazing just how accomplished I felt. My family was so happy. It didn't take this monumental thing. It didn't take, you know, me writing another book or trying to perform somewhere or do these things that we're taught that that's success. No, it was just realizing that I have these incredible relationships with my family, and they know how much I love them. It's not even that they love me, they know that I love them. Because at the end of the day, that has become the most important thing to me. I just want them to know that I love them. Because you look at when we all pass away, you look at 100 years past that, everybody who knew us will be gone. And what really mattered in my life, even if people were famous and their memories remain, everything is so distorted. What really matters? Who cares? It's that the people around them knew that they loved them, and that they built them up and empowered them and were a positive force in their lives. So that, I think, for me, that's what it's taken for me to quiet that inner critic and say, you know what, I'm doing enough. And it doesn't take these Herculean efforts or tasks. It is just the simple smallest things sometimes, just the fact that my family knows that I care.
You're really doing more than enough, but let's talk about that unfinished business. Opal has this heartbreaking realization about her parents, who sacrificed so much for her. She chokes out, and I'll quote here, "I'm so sorry. I should have come to see you," realizing she completely missed the love right in front of her, as you put it. It's a devastating moment of regret. How does the Master Luthier, this guide in purgatory, help a soul like Opal begin to repair a wound that seems unfixable?
I think it's just those relationships. It's just finding that compassion for herself and realizing that they still love her. That part came from, so before I got sick, I was definitely a workaholic, and I didn't spend time with my family like I should have. I was really trying to save up money, and what's crazy about that is we had this really good nest egg. Well, guess what? That was all gone in the very first part of my hospital stay and my diagnosis and everything. Everything that I worked for, it was gone like that. It was ridiculous. And I just saw how none of that had mattered. And so I think having him be able to help Opal realize that, yes, she had made these mistakes, but I hope that it's never too late because there's this opportunity to learn and to grow. And for me, that was the beauty of the book. I sure hope that that's what the afterlife is like, where we can continue to grow. But for me, I have been fortunate enough that I have been able to repair some of these relationships and take time with my kids instead of trying to show my love through money or through gifts. I've been able to give them time, and realizing that is what lasts. That's what means more than anything. We've looked back through pictures that we've taken and just seen the amazing things we've done. And by amazing, I mean it can be something simple like taking a walk and remembering how hard we laughed sitting by this pond that's right next to our house. It can be the the wimpiest thing. But yeah, I think that I was trying to write Opal as she's really not that terrible, but I was trying to write her as someone terrible because I wanted to make the point that it doesn't matter who anybody is, that they can find peace, they can find redemption, forgiveness, faith, they can find whatever they need if they just have faith, have trust in God, I should say.
And it's this Luthier who delivers the book's core message, and I'll quote you: "True legacy is not about what you did on earth. It's about the kindness and the residence you live within other people," which is really, I think, what you're talking about. Since he's the teacher in the Pleopits, is this the final exam? Is the main business of purgatory, as you talk about, and we don't know whether there really is a purgatory, but is there the main business of purgatory simply learning to finally understand this is this one truth here?
I think so. Yeah, absolutely. I've got to tell you something about the Master Luthier. So he's based on a violin teacher I had. He taught me how to fiddle when I was a teenager. And I really felt like this ripple effect of his teachings, his inspirations throughout my life. And he was an older man when he taught me how to play. He was probably in his 80s. But what was really interesting, a long time after he taught me, I was actually playing in Ogden, Utah. And this person came up to me and said, "Oh my gosh, you sound so much like Jim Shoop. Do you know Jim Shoop?" And I said, "He taught me how to fiddle." And so here was this ripple effect of this kindness and this just, he was so patient with me, teaching me how to play. And then it's something that's just been one of the biggest blessings of my life. And yeah, so I think that is the main message of the book is just we need to be kind to each other. And then also, I think Opal had to find that kindness and forgiveness for herself too. But I think that's what ultimately brings peace. But yeah, I think the best thing anybody can do truly is just to be kind. I think that's the best way we can be like God, but try to be in
So
his image or whatever.
it's interesting that you say that because teaching my children when they were very young, the one rule that we told them, of course, we had lots of rules in our house, but we said all of the rules really boil down to you have to be kind. And so I think it's really special that you landed on that as really the main, what we call in Hebrew the ikar, like the main concept in life is kindness, chesed. Um, that's a beautiful. It's a beautiful realization in this some confusing and sometimes painful world that we live in, that we can just be kind and have that be our guiding light. We're really going to be hopefully doing the right thing if that's what we're searching for. The Luthier also says legacy isn't about performance. It's a sound with the power to ripple. And you were just talking about ripple, I think. As a successful author with many books and a large public following, you've had a very visible performance, so to speak. How has your personal definition of legacy evolved And you started talking about this, but how has it evolved as you've been writing this, as you were writing this book?
Well, I mean, I would love for people to read this and to find peace within themselves and whatever it is that they might be facing. I talk about so many difficult subjects in this that I think a lot of people deal with. But really, for me, my legacy, the most important thing to me is just my family. Because friends, they come and go. And, you think about even a following, things like that come and go. It's just, I never expected so many people to start watching my videos, and that's been both good and bad in a lot of ways. I've met some incredible people who have changed my life, and then, there of course are the people who haven't been as kind, and so that's been difficult too. But really, I mean, for my legacy, the people who know me, the people who I really care about, they're with me every single day. I mean, they talk to me every day. They're my kids and my husband and, my family. So I just hope that I've shown them enough about myself that they think well of me, because I think if they didn't think well of me, that would be pretty devastating. But my legacy, I just hope that, we were talking about kindness. I hope that the one thing that I have left behind for them is, I've told my kids, if they could be two things, I want them to be kind and I want them to be hardworking. And I feel like if people are those two things, that they can go so far in life. It's just, I think those are so important. But I think that's what I'd like my legacy to be, is to my kids, just so they could ultimately be happy.
Elisa, you and I have spoken about your fight. You are fighting and you're getting good news, which is wonderful. But you've also described hope itself as a powerful and possibly defeating thing. That's such an honest and profound insight. As a wife and a mother, how do you navigate holding on to that hope for the future while also living in the truth of the present moment?
I want to be hopeful, but I also have to temper that with reality. There have been so many times where I've thought I could beat this. I did even get to ring the bell at one point, which means that you get to stop cancer treatments, and they think that maybe you won't have to continue again. Well, then the cancer got so much worse. It just grew and grew, and they found it in new places. And so at that point, I had gotten so hopeful that I almost felt like, when the reality hit, like the doctors had said, that this is probably what I'll die from. I mean, they continue to say that, even though I've gotten this good news. They just want me to enjoy whatever I can while I can, basically. But I think it's so hard to I don't want to say defeat cancer, but to get well after this, when it's taken so strong of a hold on your body. I mean, where it's been in my brain several times now. I mean, I think if somebody's had a brain tumor, and even if they're able to get rid of it, they were saying something like 50% of patients will get another brain tumor within that year. So just the reality of that, I want to be hopeful, but I don't want my hopes to be dashed, to use that cliche. I don't want to tell my kids, I'm going to get better, I'm going to do all these things, and then suddenly we get bad news again. Because it is so hard to get to that place of being excited. And a lot of people don't understand this, because I will tell people just honestly how things are going. And yes, I have gotten good news, which is amazing, that some of the cancer isn't there anymore, which is unreal. But the fact is, there are still two huge places where I do have cancer, and that's still scary. But I have people who want to say, well, don't speak that, don't say this, don't do that. And I just figure, whatever I've been doing so far, I'm still here. So I think I'm just gonna say what's going on. just just try my hardest so I'm not crushed, and I still feel like I've had the energy to keep going. And I think some of that is just honesty and not getting up here, not getting down here, but just like the baby bear. It's just right.
Just in the middle, just right.
Yeah.
Your rabbi, Rabbi Goodman, wrote beautifully that, and I'll quote, "For you, every moment is a rung on that ladder." Contrasting it with people who see life as a garage full of many small ladders where goals are met and put away. Since your 2020 hospitalization that you've spoken of, you've mentioned finding peace and belonging in Judaism. How has that deep spiritual foundation helped you stop viewing moments as individual ladders to complete and start seeing them as continuous, present rung, she describes?
I think just like you were saying, just living in the moment. I feel like when I go to the synagogue, you can't focus on anything else. The music is so beautiful. You're just thinking about that divine connection that everybody can have, and I believe does have with God. That how can you think about anything else when you're connecting with somebody who created everything? I mean, how incredible is that? And when you really start to get down to the roots of that we're even alive, that we're even breathing, that God even decided to let each one of us exist. And I don't want to take any bit of it for granted. So going to the synagogue for me, I feel like I finally come home. It's amazing that I found Judaism through all of this. I've always kind of felt a pull toward it. But you know the story how they told me I only had 2 years to live and asked if I wanted to talk to a pastor or any clergyman. And so I felt like I was speed dating different religions. But somehow just finding that peace with Judaism, I started attending some of the services online for a synagogue in New York. And then I started attending them in LA too, just from the hospital room and just finding so much peace. I think the biggest thing for me was just that whole belief that we're enough. You know, you have the good and the bad and everything in between, and that we're enough.
You are completing your conversion, please God, tomorrow, stepping into the mikveh and formally joining the Jewish people. I call that a naturalization ceremony. This is an enormous spiritual undertaking. Considering this final defining act of commitment and your own story of unfinished business, how does the idea of becoming a Jew influence your personal understanding of what it means to create harmony and live with wholeness?
Oh, I feel like it's such a huge responsibility in one way because I'm really saying this is who I want to be, and knowing that I want to strive toward that and work toward that, but also leaving the perfectionism behind. And yeah, there's so much to learn. I got the the tiny Barnes and Noble version of the Talmud. Oh my goodness. And some of the stories, I'm so sorry to say this, but sometimes they can be so boring and you're going, "Oh, this is so boring." And then you get to something really good. Like all of a sudden there's a hooker. And so, yeah, these nuggets of, wow, I'm just reading it just for the, I don't want to say the hookers, but the good parts.
That's so funny. That's so funny.
Yeah,
And it's very
yeah,
true. The Talmud has everything in it, everything,
yeah.
everyone's opinion and everything. It's really not, it's very different from the Bible, from the Tanakh. It has so much there. It's definitely NC-17 probably. So
Yes.
I'm glad that you're getting in there. And especially I think you'll enjoy the what they call the Agadah, the kind of legendary part, the stories that are involved more than just the strict halacha, the kind of arguing about Jewish law, but getting into those
Yes.
stories which really speak to what you do. Um,
Yeah.
as we close, for everyone listening, all of whom have their own unfinished business in one way or another. What is the one thing you'd encourage them to do today to add a little more harmony to their own symphony?
I think just to think about the people they love and what would they want to do special for them, thinking about the legacy they want to leave, whether it is like me to want my kids to be kind or whatever it is there something that they could do for their loved ones special that would make a difference in their lives today? Because sometimes it can be just something small, writing a note for somebody. I have a note that I wrote for my son that he told me the other day, I'm going to keep this forever. And I just thought that was the sweetest thing. Yeah, just whatever it is, just to make an impact on the people that you love, just take time to do it. And I think that it's amazing how much it can brighten our days too.
Elisa Magagna, E.C. Stilson, thank you so much for gracing us right here at the Rabbi Avi Show. We pray that you will have a beautiful day, especially tomorrow. And
Thank
welcome,
you.
welcome to the Jewish people, especially at a time where many people would definitely shy away from that. You're embracing, drawing near to Torah, drawing near to Klal Yisrael, the wholeness and the entirety of the people Israel. And we pray that you will be strengthened in your resolve and your love for your family and in this fight against cancer and this fight toward kindness and humanity. So thank you.
Thank you.